Still tired as fuck now. I sit back and put my feet up again, man. Got a day off from life. Just have a fucking can't believe how weird I'm getting the beer, man. It's fucking crazy. 7 shotguns at me, I feel shit.
To humans from one side. In 1835, about 50 birds were still there. On July 3rd of 1844, 3 fishermen landed on LD Island. They found a breeding pair of gray auks with a single egg. They strangled both birds and smashed the egg. Those were the last confirmed gray auks ever seen. Irish elk. Well, this one is named Irish elk. It wasn't an elk per se. And it wasn't exclusively Irish either. It was a giant deer that roamed across Europe and Asia for about 400,000 years. But Irish elk stuck as a name because most of the best preserved fossils were dug up from Irish peat bogs in the 1600s and 1700s. And when I say giant, I mean it. Almost as big as me. These things stood at about 7 feet tall at the shoulder, and I mean that's technically the height of an average door frame, and they weighed up to 1,500 pounds. The males had antlers that could span 12 feet across, which is wider than most modern cars. Also, a single set of antlers could apparently weigh nearly 90 pounds, and they shed them every year and grew them back. For centuries, scientists thought those massive antlers were what killed them off, and they got too big, too heavy, made the deer clumsy, and they got tangled in trees. This became the poster child for something called orthogenesis, the discredited idea that evolution sometimes gets stuck on a path it cannot stop, even when it leads to extinction. Turns out that's probably not what happened. The antlers were actually proportional to their body size. What killed them was rapid climate change. The first wave of extinction hit Western Europe about 12,000 years ago during a period of extreme cooling. These deer needed mineral-rich grass and open parkland to survive and support these supposedly energy-hungry antlers. When temperatures plummeted and their food sources collapsed, they couldn't adapt fast enough, and that was it for them. The circus. Quagga. This is the only photo of a quagga that was ever taken. It died in 1883, and rather unfortunately, nobody even realized it was the last one. But that death is basically how the quagga went extinct. But what was it exactly?
Zebra, donkey.
Well, think zebra, but only halfway there. These ones had dark stripes on their head and neck, but as you move back along the body, the stripes faded into plain brown. No stripes on the legs, no stripes on the rear, just solid brown like a horse. Honestly, it's like nature wanted to create a zebra at first and then gave up halfway.
Yeah.
As for the location, they roamed the plains of South Africa in vast herds, living in groups called harems of 40 to 60 animals. And they were apparently more docile than other zebras. That probably didn't help their survival chances. When Dutch settlers arrived in South Africa, they saw quaggas as competition for livestock grazing, so they hunted them relentlessly for sport, for meat, and for their distinctive hides, which were used to make grain bags. Their limited range made them especially vulnerable. By the 1850s, they had vanished from most of their territory.
Bot Rix has correctly joined the channel.
Killed around 1878. 5 years later, on August 12, 1883, the last captive quagga died. She was a female at Amsterdam Zoo, and like I said at the start, nobody noticed that she was the last of her kind until years later. And by the way, the confusion on whether or not she was the last of her kind came because, quote, quagga was used as a general term for any zebra in Afrikaans. So people didn't realize this specific subspecies had disappeared forever. Moa. New Zealand had no land mammals for 80 million years. And I mean none at all. It had basically no known predators, just birds. And in that evolutionary vacuum, some of those birds got absolutely massive in population. That's the moa, consisting of multiple species, with the largest species standing about 12 feet tall, with their neck outstretched and weighed up to 510 pounds. To put that into perspective, that's taller than a basketball hoop. Also, they were the only completely wingless birds ever known to exist. And not flightless with tiny wings like ostriches or kiwis, nope. They had no wings at all. They had evolved in isolation for so long that wings just disappeared entirely. Their only predator was Haast's eagle, the largest eagle ever known, which also went extinct when the moa disappeared. When Polynesians arrived in New Zealand around 1300 AD, the moa population was estimated somewhere between 58,000 and 2.5 million birds. I know, that's a crazy estimation gap, but that's what the research says. They were the dominant herbivores across the islands. Within 100 to 200 years, every single species was extinct. Why? Well, that was thanks to good old hunting.
What's up, dog?
Carolina parakeet.
Oh, what's up, dude?
This bright green parrot with a yellow
Just
head
taking
and
it
a
easy.
face was North America's only native
Watching
parrot.
extinct creatures iceberg. Taking it easy today, man. I'm tired. Yeah.
And it lived as far north as
Nice.
upstate New York and as far
Taking it
west as
easy today,
Nebraska.
man.
The bird itself
Taking
was
it
12
easy.
inches long and very noticeable due to both size and color. It's said that in
Looks like a
1780, a
parrot.
flock actually descended on a house in rural New York, covering it completely from the roof to the ground before flying off. Interestingly, the deeply religious townspeople thought it was the apocalypse. A couple of decades later, the bird's population was dwindling. By 1831, John James
Apocalypse.
Audubon was already warning that they were disappearing. Why? Well, farmers shot them as crop pests. Also, hunters killed them for their colorful feathers, which were fashionable hat decorations in the early 1900s. Forests were also cleared for agriculture, destroying their nesting sites. But here's what really made it worse. These parakeets had this unfortunate habit of gathering around their dead companions.
Oh,
When one
man.
was shot, the rest of the flock would shriek and swarm the body. Apparently,
Jeez.
hunters could just wipe them out like
Yeah,
that.
it's so
You think
easy to
about it,
fucking hunt
all
them, dude.
Huddled up, probably
You
praying for
shoot
their
one,
God
and
who just
another
got
one comes,
shot.
and you shoot that one, and another one comes, and you shoot that
Anyway,
one.
the last wild Carolina parakeet was killed in Florida in 1904. The last captive bird,
Oh, it
a
looks like
male named
fucking-
Incus,
Looks like a person standing up, kind of. Is his legs? Take a look into the side.
died in the Cincinnati Zoo on February 21st of 1918. Pinta Island tortoise. On June 24th, 2012, a
Tortoise.
caretaker named Fausto Lorena walked into an enclosure at the Charles Darwin Research Station in the Galapagos and found this tortoise named George stretched out near his waterhole, body still warm but lifeless. George was roughly 100 years old.
Yeah,
He'd
they
been
can live
under
thousands of
Lorena's care
years.
for 40 years, and with his death, an entire subspecies went extinct. Lonesome George was the last Pinta Island tortoise. His subspecies had been considered extinct until 1971, when a Hungarian scientist spotted him wandering around Pinta Island. By then, the island's vegetation had been completely devastated. In 1859, fishermen had released 3 goats there for fresh meat. Within a decade, that population exploded to 40,000. The goats ate everything, destroying the tortoise's habitat. George was taken to the research station in 1972, and scientists
Damn.
immediately began trying to save his subspecies. They paired him with 4 different females from closely related subspecies over more than 3 decades. The females laid eggs, but George, well, he was showing no interest. None of the eggs ever hatched. In his final years, he was known as the rarest creature in the world. He became
Damn.
a global conversation icon. His image on stamps, t-shirts, logos. Researchers even offered a $10,000
He was slamming some of the other
for
female
anyone who could
turtles, but he
find a
just wasn't
female
liking
Pinta
it.
tortoise, but no one could. Baiji river dolphin. In Chinese legend, this animal, the Baiji, was called the goddess of Yangtze, a symbol of peace and prosperity. For 20 million years, this freshwater dolphin lived in China's Yangtze River. In the 1950s, there were an estimated
Yangtze.
6,000 of them. By 2006, well, there were 0. When it had been around, though, the Baiji was a small, nearly blind dolphin with pale gray skin and a long, narrow beak. It relied almost entirely on echolocation to navigate the murky waters and hunt fish. And that's what ultimately killed it. The river became too noisy to echolocate. As China industrialized, the Yangtze transformed into one of the world's busiest shipping routes. The noise was deafening. Baiji couldn't communicate, navigate, or find food. But also the final nail in the coffin for them was fishing. Electric fishing, though illegal, was widespread. It stunned everything in the water, including dolphins. Rolling hook-long lines and nets drowned them. By the 1970s, only a few hundred remained. By 1997, just 13 were left. In
Electric
2002,
fishing.
the last captive Baiji, a male named Kiki who lived in captivity for 22 years, died. In late 2006, scientists mounted one final search. 2 boats surveyed the entire Yangtze River for 6 weeks. They used visual surveys and acoustic monitoring. They covered every inch of the Baiji's historical range twice. They found nothing. Not a single dolphin. Not even a sound that would indicate the creature's hiding. In December of 2006, the Baiji was declared functionally extinct. It became the first dolphin species and the first cetacean driven to extinction by humans. Hello everyone and welcome to the next Exist Drop. Starting us off is the amazing kitten tea. As you can see, there are a bunch of eyeless kittens on my right now, and it's gonna be our best seller one. And yes, that is my rabbit animatronic logo dying on the floor alone. We wanted to get very creepy with this drop. And speaking of creepy, tell me this isn't creepy. Yes, you're
Sexism?
legally required to agree with me. Here's what we call the
Sexist?
tea. This is an old image of someone getting their mouth opened by a dentist. Honestly, it was just a free image with no copyright. It took a while, but but we actually were able to find a creepy image, and that was this one. The other ones, believe me guys, oh my god, you would have thought the brand was not named Exist. And you're probably wondering about
the shirt says sexist.
Well, if you have time, you can go read them on the website. But I always had this scary idea that what if I died and went to heaven and nobody was there? So that's basically what I'm trying to communicate with these quotes. Oh yeah, the name of this tea is the Heaven Tea. With that being said, EarlDoesn'tExist.com. You guys know where to get these shirts at. This is my favorite drop so far, and I'm very proud of the team for getting this through. And with that being said, make sure to go buy a t-shirt. Rocky Mountain Locust. In 1875, the sky over Nebraska allegedly went dark for 6 hours straight. A single swarm of Rocky Mountain locusts, measuring 198,000 square miles, bigger than California, had swam over it. According to Guinness World Records, this remains the greatest concentration of animals ever recorded. An estimated 12.5 trillion insects weighing 27.5 million tons. And the insects were none other than Rocky Mountain locusts.
Yeah, right.
And basically, they were just grasshoppers, about an inch long, kind of like me, but when drought and
25 trillion? How do you start fucking counting
they
that?
became biblical
Okay, there's one
plagues. They
trillion.
ate everything. Crops, obviously.
It's probably
but
2
also
trillion.
harnesses, wool straight off sheep's backs, wood, clothes, even pitchfork handles. Settlers even joke that they, quote, ate everything but the mortgage. They also allegedly piled up over a foot deep. Train tracks became so slick with crusted locusts that trains couldn't even get traction. Between 1873 and 1877, swarms devastated the Great Plains. The federal government declared at 1876 that, quote, the Rocky Mountain locust is the most serious impediment to the settlement of the West. Congress sent $30,000 in emergency seeds.
The man
one
named
of the first
after a
times the government
letter.
provided
J.
disaster relief to farmers. People tried everything. Fire, dynamite, machines coated in coal tar, covering fields with sheets. Nothing worked. But then, they just vanished. Natural causes. The last one was seen in 1902, just 27 years after that massive 1875 swarm. To be specific, what ended up killing them is that despite covering millions of square miles during swarms, they only bred successfully in a tiny area, maybe 3,000 square miles in the fertile valleys of the base of the Rockies. When settlers plowed those valleys, planted crops, and introduced cattle, they unknowingly destroyed every breeding ground. The body. Sicilian wolf. The Sicilian wolves were smaller than their mainland Italian cousins, you know, the regular wolves, standing just 21 inches tall at the shoulder, about the size of a border collie. Their body length averaged about 41 inches from nose to tail, but the real giveaway was their coat. While Italian wolves had dark gray fur with distinctive black bands on their front legs, Sicilian wolves were paler, almost sandy colored, and those dark leg bands were either absent or barely visible. They looked like someone had left a regular wolf out in the Mediterranean sun too long, and it had sort of faded out. These wolves had been isolated in Sicily since the end of the Ice Age, roughly 11,000 years of evolution completely cut off from the mainland. And by the way, Sicily is the largest island in the Mediterranean, and for the millennia, it was their fortress. There was no way off, and also no way for other wolves to get in, so they evolved into something distinct, adapted perfectly to their island home. But isolation works both ways. When humans decided wolves were the enemy, there was nowhere to run. By the late 1800s, they were still doing fine. Considered by no means rare around Catania and very common in Messina and Syracuse. Then came the 20th century, and with it an aggressive extermination campaign. Sicilian farmers and shepherds hunted them relentlessly to protect livestock. They poisoned them, trapped them, and even just shot them on sight. You know, the usual playbook for getting rid of predators at the time. Today, only 7 museum specimens remain, a few skins, 1 skull, some skeletal fragments scattered across Italian museums. Atlas bear. Africa had bears. Just one species, but they were there.
African
the Atlas bear roamed the
lion
mountains of North Africa
safari.
from Morocco to Libya for thousands of years. And then, like so many other animals on this list, we
The
killed
king of
every single one of
Africa.
them. Anyway, the distinction of these ones was that
And
they
the
were
motherfucking
brown,
king
but
of
smaller
Africa.
and stockier. Their fur was brownish black with this distinctive reddish-orange belly, and it grew thick. Unlike other brown bears, they had no white marking on their muzzle. Their claws and snout were surprisingly short compared to American black bears, giving them an almost compact, large barrel-like look. They apparently lived peacefully in the Atlas Mountains, feeding on roots, acorns, and nuts, occasionally scavenging carrion, or hunting small mammals. Just bears doing bear things in Mediterranean highlands. Then the Romans showed up. Starting in 146 BCE, when Rome expanded into North Africa, thousands of Atlas bears were captured and shipped across the Mediterranean for one purpose: entertainment. They were thrown into arenas to fight gladiators, to execute prisoners, and essentially to kill and be killed in front of cheering crowds. For nearly 2,000 years, Atlas bears were a prize spectacle in Roman amphitheaters across the empires. But surprisingly, that wasn't what eventually finished them off. The real death blow came from modern firearms in the 19th century. Suddenly, hunting these bears became trivially easy. European settlers and local hunters shot them on sight, just like they did with Sicilian wolves. Also, there was no conservation effort or protected status or anything of that sort, and no one was keeping count. The Atlas bear was killed by hunters in 1870 in the Tishuan Mountains of northern Morocco, shot dead in the same mountain range where their species had lived for millennia. And going off my script a little bit here, I do want to just express my hatred towards using animals for entertainment purposes such as circuses. I remember when I was in high school, I made a small presentation about bears that were used as entertainment. I think my project was about animals, but
That's better than using them for fur.
For some reason.
Going
Just
them and
seeing
taking their
bears
fur.
riding a tricycle or a unicycle with people cheering, people paying to see that, you know, in a circus. Just knowing the fact that these bears were hit so they could balance on a unicycle. I can't even balance on a unicycle. Imagine forcing a bear to do that. I've always had such a hatred for animals being used for entertainment when it comes to abuse. I know there are dog shows out there where you just teach the dogs and it's pretty normal. But when it comes to really odd things,
I saw a dog show one time when I was a kid.
You know damn well they were beating that bear. But I'm going off topic. Let's head on to the next one. Elephant bird. Think of this one as an ostrich, but with its weight tripled and an extra 3 feet of height. Known as the elephant bird, it was apparently among the largest birds that ever existed. That's in terms of weight. It was definitely not the tallest. That honor goes to New Zealand's moa. Anyway, these flightless giants stood up to 10 feet tall and could weigh over 1,000 pounds. They lived on Madagascar, an island that had been covered from the mainland for millions of
Christmas
years.
and we'll be
Like
broke
New
on
Zealand's
Christmas,
moa,
man.
elephant birds evolved in complete
Get back to
isolation
OnlyFans,
with no
I think.
natural predators. They were ratites. That means they were relatives of ostriches, emus, and kiwis. But while those birds kept some remnants of wings, elephant birds went in the opposite direction. They were completely flightless, only characterized with thick, sturdy legs built to essentially support half a ton of bird. Now, the most incredible thing about these birds, and I mean almost literally, is their eggs. An elephant bird egg could weigh up to 22 pounds. That means one egg could hold the equivalent of 100 chicken eggs. And when humans first arrived on Madagascar around 2,000 years ago, elephant birds were everywhere. Then, in the span of maybe a few centuries, they completely vanished.
Maybe Madagascar from our childhood.
800 and 1050 CE, roughly 1,000 years ago. What killed them? The usual suspects: hunting and habitat loss. Humans arrived and immediately recognized elephant birds as easy prey. They were massive, slow, and had never seen a predator before. Worse, their enormous eggs were basically ready-made meals. A single egg could feed a family for days. People didn't need to kill the adults. They just raided the nest, took the eggs, and rinse and repeat. Megalodon. This one is pretty unique because it's considered the most terrifying predator to ever patrol the oceans. Interestingly, like in the case of dodos, there was never a full, complete megalodon skeleton found. Apparently, sharks are entirely made of cartilage, not bone, and cartilage doesn't fossilize well. So everything we know about the megalodon comes mainly from teeth. Thousands upon thousands of scattered teeth, each one apparently the size of a human hand. And those teeth tell a nightmare story. The megalodon reached lengths of up to 60 feet, roughly 3 times longer than today's great white shark. Its jaws could open nearly 10 feet wide, lined with 276 teeth arranged in multiple rows. Each tooth measured over 7 inches long, built like a steak knife designed to slice through whale bone like butter. Scientists estimate the bite force could have been one of the most powerful to ever exist, strong enough to crush a small car. For nearly 20 million years, this apex predator ruled every ocean on Earth. From the early Miocene to the early Paleocene, Megalodon had no competition or threats and no equals. It hunted whales the way great whites hunt seals. It was so dominant that some scientists believe its very existence shaped the evolution of modern whales, forcing them to become faster, smarter, and more migratory just to survive. And then, about 3.6 million years ago, it vanished, and we really don't know why. Basilosaurus. When they first dug up this creature's bones in 1834, they thought it was a sea serpent. The skeleton stretched nearly 60 feet long, with a body that curved and twisted like a snake frozen mid-strike. They called it Basilosaurus, aka King Lizard, because everyone assumed they'd found proof that ancient sea monsters were real. They were half right. Basilosaurus wasn't a reptile, it was a whale. But not like any whale you've ever seen. This thing was built kind of wrong. Elongated and snake-like, nothing like the streamlined bodies of modern whales. It stretched up to 60 feet long and weighed around 15 tons, with a tiny head compared to its massive body. Its skull was packed with sharp, triangular teeth, the kind designed for tearing flesh, not filtering krill. From the looks of it, this was one of the ocean's first apex predators, hunting smaller whales and large fish in the warm, shallow seas that covered what is now Alabama, Egypt, and Pakistan. But it disappeared around 34 million years ago. And what killed it? Well, the world got colder. Ocean temperatures dropped and sea levels changed. The warm, shallow seas where Basilosaurus thrived began to vanish, replaced by deeper, cooler oceans that favored faster, more efficient predators. Modern toothed whales and early ancestors of today's dolphins began to dominate. Basilosaurus, with its strange body, could not compete. Nature took its course. White-footed rabbit rat. The white-footed rabbit rat disappeared sometime in the mid-1800s, maybe 1857, maybe later. Nobody knows for sure. Apparently, it just stopped appearing. Now, appearance-wise, this was an almost cute kitten-sized creature, one of Australia's largest native rodents, about 10 inches long with a bushy tail nearly as long as its body, dark brown on top, and stark white underneath. It looked like someone had mashed together a rat, a rabbit, and a squirrel into something that should not quite exist. The Aboriginal people called it Naruk, which translates to rabbit biscuit. Honestly, that sounds like rabbit a username. Anyway, they were nocturnal and they lived in trees, building nests of leaves in the hollow limbs of eucalyptus trees across southern Australia. From Adelaide to Sydney, they were everywhere. In 1846, naturalist John Cotton, for example, reported them as common in Victoria's Sydney.
Just watched extinct animals.
Later, they had become ghosts. And the thing is, we don't really know what killed them. Introduced rats may have spread diseases or competed for food. Feral cats probably hunted them a lot. These rabbit rats had evolved without ground predators and had no defenses against an ambush hunter that could climb. Habitat destruction also may not have helped. The last confirmed sighting was probably in the 1850s, but probably is doing a lot of work there.
Oh, really? Shit. I was having an issue with
this. It opens up the right-click menu.
In 1986, someone caught a bird in the forest of northern
Brazil. Just switch
Brazil.
your mouse keys around then.
In a museum drawer and moved on.
Have you ever had this issue?
No.
Mistaken for a different.
Did you spill beer on it or something?
Meaning no one even looked
at it. You can change the fucking
in 2014.
You can change the what is it, pointer?
No.
Pointer option. There's a way to change the fucking left click and right click. Oh, there you go.
I've had this issue before, maybe a driver.
There you go. Switch primary and secondary buttons. Yeah, maybe a driver, man. It's weird for a mouse to do that,
finally examined it closely and
well, it
realized
seems
this
more
wasn't
like
what
it's
they
a
originally
bug.
thought it was.
Yeah, maybe, man.
Instead of a setting thing.
A species science had never
documented. Yeah, that's weird for a mouse to do that, man.
Tree hunter and published
Did you drop it or like hit it or spill anything on it?
The bird was already extinct. It was a small oven bird about 8 to 9 inches long, weighing barely more than 1.5 ounces. It had a jet black crown, cinnamon brown back, and a pale orange rufous tail that contrasted sharply with its body. A heavy dagger-like beak designed for gleaning insects from tree bark. The species had only ever been found at 2 sites in northeastern Brazil, Marique in Alagoas, and Frei Caneca in Pernambuco. The last confirmed sighting was in 2007, 7 years before anyone even knew it was a distinct species. Despite intensive searching by professional ornithologists and park employees, no one has seen or heard one since. In 2019, the IUCN officially declared it extinct. Arthropleura. For nearly 2 centuries, scientists have been finding fragments of something that shouldn't exist. Fossilized body segments. Massive trackways carved into ancient stone. Pieces of an exoskeleton that suggests something impossibly large once crawled through. Primordial means as far back as the beginning of time, by the way. Then in 2021, they found a complete fossil. And it confirmed the nightmare. Arthropleura was the largest land-dwelling arthropod that ever lived. These things stretched about the size of a small car. They lived during the Carboniferous period, roughly 359 to 299 million years ago, in the humid tropical forest that covered much of the Earth's equator. Back then, the world was drowning in oxygen. Atmospheric levels reached 35% compared to today's
99 defense.
That supercharged atmosphere is what allowed insects and arthropods to grow to monstrous proportions. Dragonflies with 2-foot wingspans, scorpions the size of small dogs, and Arthropleura the king of them all. Then, at the beginning of the Permian period, around 290 million years ago, they vanished all because the atmosphere changed. Thank God. The humid climate that sustained the vast Carboniferous forest began turning dry. Those lush swamp forests collapsed and were replaced by arid landscapes. Oxygen levels began to plummet, and as atmospheric levels dropped, they suffocated. Tully monster. In 1958, an amateur fossil hunter named Francis Tully cracked open a rock in a coal pit near Mazin Creek, Illinois, and found something so bizarre that scientists have spent the last 66 years arguing about what it was. They called it the Truly Monster, and it basically looked like it had been assembled from random spare parts by someone or something that had never seen a real animal before. It had a fish-like body about 3 to 15 inches long, a long thin proboscis extending from its head like a fleshy straw, ending in a toothed claw with 8 sharp teeth, and its eyes sat on the ends of a rigid bar that stretched across its back, like someone had stuck a horizontal rod through its body and mounted eyeballs on both ends. Nothing alive today looks remotely like this one. It lived 300 million years ago during the Carboniferous period too, swimming through shallow tropical waters where Illinois now sits. But the thing is that it's been found nowhere else on Earth, only in that one fossil bed and only in Illinois. Again, scientists can't even agree on what kind of animal it was. Was it a vertebrate, an invertebrate, something in between? No one knows. The Dark Abyss. Shiriki Harlequin Frog. This frog was so strikingly beautiful that people called them clown frogs. I know, ironic, calling something beautiful a clown. And despite their delicate appearance, they packed a punch. Hidden beneath their skin were poison glands producing tetrodotoxin, the same deadly neurotoxin found in pufferfish. They lived in the
might be a bug, but you can change your Windows settings to adapt to it.
Etched alongside mountain streams at elevations between 4,600 and 8,200 feet. These were journeyal frogs.
It could also be like a key. Maybe a key is jammed on your keyboard.
And streams in the forests. Also, they were a lot in numbers, such that you could spot them easily if you knew where to look. Then came a destroyer fungus. Its scientific name is on the screen. I am not going to pronounce that, but it is called BD for short. It was or is the death of amphibians. Chytridiomycosis spread through Central America's highlands like a plague, carried by human activity and thriving in cool mountain streams where harlequin frogs lived. The fungus attacks amphibian skin, disrupting their ability to breathe and absorb water. Frogs essentially suffocated and dehydrated simultaneously. This one was last seen in Costa Rica in 1996. After that, nothing. Search after search turned up nothing. The species is now considered extinct in Costa Rica and has likely vanished from Panama as well. No captive populations exist. Barinasuchus. After the dinosaurs vanished 66 million years ago, something had to fill the void they left behind. In South America, that something was a crocodile that forgot it was supposed to live in water. Barinasuchus stretched nearly 20 feet long and weighed over 3,500 pounds. It was the largest terrestrial predator since the age of the dinosaurs, bigger than any meat-eating mammal that walked alongside it. Its skull alone measured 28 inches long and stood 16 inches high. But what made it truly terrifying? Well, its teeth. This guy had xiphodont teeth, which means kind of compressed, curved backward, with saw-like edges basically like those on steak knives. Pretty sure we all have a rough image of what that looks like. Anyway, these were the same kind that lined the jaws of the Tyrannosaurus rex, Allosaurus, and Velociraptor. Unlike modern crocodiles that ambush from water, Baryonysuchus was a terrestrial, aka land hunter. It stalked the ancient floodplains of South America, sharing the landscape with giant terror birds, apex predators in their own right. This was a world where 10-foot tall flightless birds and crocodiles the size of cars competed for the same prey, but then around 10 million years ago, they vanished from South America entirely, another victim of climate change. Allotheria of Antarctica. Now, this last one is a creature, basically a mammal that didn't fit into any category we have today. It was like an evolutionary experiment that nature tried out and then quietly abandoned. Allotheria was a subclass of mammals that included the multituberculates and Gondwanatherians, essentially bizarre rat-like creatures that dominated the southern continents when Antarctica was still green and warm. They were part of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana, and when that landmass fractured, these strange mammals spread across South America, Madagascar, India, Africa, and Antarctica. The multituberculates looked like someone tried to build a rodent from memory and got the details wrong. They had complex teeth unlike anything alive today, multiple rows of pointed bits that gave them their name. They were tiny mouse-sized creatures while others grew as large as beavers. They thrived for over 100 million years, outlasting the dinosaurs and even surviving the asteroid impact that ended the Cretaceous. Actually, they were the most successful mammals of the Mesozoic era, aka the age of reptiles. And then there were Gondwanatherians, an even stranger subspecies. Until 30 years ago, scientists didn't even know they existed. They were represented by literal handfuls of teeth and jaw fragments scattered across southern continents. When paleontologists finally found a complete skull in Madagascar in 2014, it revealed a mammal with massive eye sockets, enormous nasal cavities, and a brain structured for enhanced smell and hearing. Both groups lived in Antarctica during the Cretaceous and Paleogene periods, when the continent was covered in lush forest and sat much farther north than it does today. Then, sometime in the late Eocene, around 35 million years ago, they vanished. Both lineages completely extinct. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's iceberg. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. If you think I earned your subscription, which I know I did, make sure to subscribe. Go watch the other icebergs now.
The deadliest animal attacks. Oh.
Hello everyone and welcome to week 1 of Iceberg Month. Yes, this is why I didn't really upload for a while. I've been working so hard on this project, and like the title of this series suggests, we're taking it back to the roots of the blow up of this channel. I can't say the roots of this channel because the roots of this channel is from 2013 and that was GTA video, so I can't really say that. But we're taking it back to probably when you found me. And since we're talking about animal attacks, there will be some censorship, but for the most part there won't be, because something I'm introducing with Iceberg Month is 3D modeling. I can't actually show you guys the full-length videos of the animal attacks, so I did get a 3D modeler to help me out with this series. So throughout this entire series, we're gonna see exclusive 3D modeling made just for these scenarios. I thought I'd bring back icebergs because 1, you guys keep begging me for them, and 2, I made a name for myself now. This isn't Iceberg Boy anymore, this is Tough. So yeah, I made a name for myself. I thought I'd bring back isn't Iceberg Boy anymore, this is Tough. So yeah, I mean, why not? I'm not gonna spam these though. I mean, I'm gonna spam them this month because it's Iceberg Month. And if this series goes well, yeah, I would love to bring it back every November. I think that would be so fun. But I'm getting ahead of myself there. I do want to thank you guys for being supporters of this channel. Maybe for a lot of you, it's been a while since you've seen my face or heard my voice. And make sure to subscribe with post notifications on. But I wanted to do something to celebrate for 4 years of being on YouTube. That's why I made a joke about this being my senior year of YouTube. Thank you guys so much for still watching my videos. I appreciate you guys. I also want to give a big thanks to the sponsors that keep this channel afloat. Today's sponsor is ZocDoc. Then next thing,
no online fucking doctor, dude.
One-stop shop for all your healthcare needs. Plus, it's completely free. So stop putting off those doctor appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/Tuv, which can also be found in the description, to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. With that being said, let's head on to the video. And before the actual topic does start, I do want to let you guys know that this iceberg will go from most tame to most gruesome, rather than like least known to most known. This is most tame to most gruesome, just like my older videos. With that being said, if you're not subscribed, don't subscribe yet. I will earn your subscription by the end of this video. Let's get right into the topic. The tip. Mick Fanning. Live shark encounter during the 2015 J Bay Open, South Africa. So you're watching what's supposed to be the final of a professional surfing competition. It's July 19th, 2015, and you're tuned into the J Bay Open in South Africa. The waves are pumping, the sky's blue, and everything's perfect. Then, 3 minutes and 47 seconds into the heat, something appears behind one of the surfers that seems rather unbelievable and soon later horrific. A live shark basically attacks a surfer, and that surfer was none other than Mick Fanning, a 3-time world champion who was competing against Julian Wilson in what should have been just a regular surfing final. What happened was Mick was sitting on his board about to start paddling when he felt something come up behind him. In his own words later, he said, "I had this feeling that something was coming up behind me. That's when I got hit." The shark knocked him clean off his board and pulled him underwater. His leg rope snapped under the force. Millions of people around the world were watching this unfold live. For 15 seconds that felt like forever, nobody knew
people
that Mick was
watching
still alive.
surfing,
The
dude.
wave in the foreground blocked the view, and all you could see was thrashing water. People on the beach burst into screams and tears, certain they had just witnessed a man die. But Mick fought back. "I punched it in the back," he said afterward. Julian Wilson, who was further down the point, saw the whole thing happen and immediately started paddling at full speed towards the chaos, ready to use his board as a weapon. Mick described the encounter lasting about 10 minutes in his head, but the actual footage shows it was only about 10 seconds. I guess that's what adrenaline does to you. Time probably just slows down when you're fighting for your life. Anyway, when the jet ski finally reached him and Mick climbed on, giving that thumbs up, the entire surfing world exhaled. But of course he was shaken and so were other people. This caused the competition to be cancelled. Now the attack itself wasn't as brutal as it could have been, it's just one of those situations that makes your heart skip a beat. And just for context, looking at the specific attack at our starting point, we're still in relatively tame territory for what's coming. Partly because Mick walked away without a scratch. Just a small pressure ding on his board and a broken leash. WSL officials, however, took the incident seriously and even investigated and reported that there were actually 2 sharks in that area, making it the first time in surfing history a competitor had encountered multiple sharks during an event. Mick got incredibly lucky that day. Humpback whale swallows kayaker. Early this year, February 8th to be exact, 24-year-old Adrian Simancas was out kayaking with his father in the pristine waters of southern Chile's Strait of Magellan. Just picture them out paddling along, probably enjoying the scenery, when suddenly the ocean seems to explode beneath Adrian. Yes, I'm using the word explode here because I don't know how else to describe a whale swallowing you coming up from the ocean. I don't know. So like I said, what came up exploding from the water wasn't a wave, it was a 40-ton humpback whale, and unfortunately, Simancas was about to become the main course. His father caught the whole terrifying encounter on camera. 1 second Adrian's paddling along, the next he has completely disappeared in the whale's mouth. "I thought I was dead," Adrian said afterward, and honestly, watching the video, you'd think the same thing. The whale bursts out of the water, its massive mouth opens, and Adrian just vanishes. The whale didn't hold on to him long, maybe 2 or 3 seconds before spitting him back out. The good thing is, humpback whales don't actually swallow humans. Their throats are only about the size of a dinner plate, designed for filtering tiny krill and small fish. So while Adrian felt like he was being eaten alive, the whale was probably just as shocked as he was. Wildlife scientist Vanessa Pirota explained that the whale was likely lunge feeding, basically opening its massive mouth and taking in thousands of gallons of seawater to filter out food. Adrian just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. When Adrian popped back up, you can hear his father yelling, "Grab the boat," as his son swims frantically towards the safety of the raft. The whale, meanwhile, arched its spine and dove back down like nothing had happened. Interestingly, the Strait of Magellan is actually a popular tourist destination for exactly this kind of wildlife encounter. The government's tourism website advertises kayaking with dolphins and humpback whales as a featured activity, but nobody mentions the possibility of accidentally becoming part of a whale's lunch.
Yep.
Tourist boat attacked by territorial hippo. So we're stepping things up a notch here. If you thought the other 2 were the only things you should worry about the ocean, which would be dumb. No, here's another reason to be scared of the water, I should say, not the ocean. Meet the hippopotamus. And honestly, this might be the most underestimated killer on the planet. Last year in the Chobe River in Namibia, Africa, a group of tourists were enjoying what should be a peaceful river cruise when they spotted some hippos bathing in the water. Nice scenery, right? Well, yes, but it would soon turn horrific. One of the tourists, Jackie Boshoff, is probably never going to forget what happened next. One of the male hippos suddenly turned towards their boat. This 2-ton killing machine decided their boat was a threat, and when a hippo makes that decision, you're in serious trouble. The thing about hippos is that they can hit 30 miles per hour in the water. So when this massive bull started charging, the skipper immediately took off, trying to escape. But there was a problem. They were in shallow water. The propeller kept hitting the bottom and they couldn't get the speed they needed. So the hippo caught up, launching itself at their boat and clamping down on their rear motor with jaws that could snap a crocodile in half. Regarding the attack, Jackie later said, "You hear and read about this stuff, never thinking it could happen to you." But there she was, watching this prehistoric looking beast literally trying to destroy their only means of escape. The engine was getting torn apart by teeth designed to crush bone. Now, according to the Independent report, the attack was likely triggered by the male protecting a calf in the area. They were lucky this time because actually, hippos kill more people in Africa than almost any other large animal, more than lions and more than crocodiles. These things are responsible for around 500 human deaths every year. The surface. Tamari SeaWorld orca attack. Most people know about the SeaWorld trainer who was killed by an orca, but there is another attack fully captured on camera. The year was 2002 at SeaWorld San Diego, and 28-year-old trainer Tamari Tolleson was working with two killer whales, Orchid and Splash. So she sat sitting at the edge of the pool, dangling her legs in the water like she'd probably done hundreds of times before. Then, without warning, both orcas grabbed her and dragged her underwater. This video was captured by the tourists there, and no other trainer had any idea that this was happening. Horrific, and Tamari was probably thinking she was gonna die. But as she fought for her life underwater, her coworkers had become aware and responded and were frantically trying to get everything to get the whales to release her. But unfortunately, the two orcas weren't responding to any of the commands or signals. They were, quote, refusing all attempts to be called back. That's when Robin Sheets made a desperate decision that could have either saved Tamari or made everything infinitely worse. He released Kasaka, the more dominant orca, from her enclosure. It was an incredible gamble, but Sheets understood orca hierarchy, and he was betting that Splash and Orchid would be more concerned about the dominant whale entering their space than continuing their attack. And the gamble actually worked. Only when they sensed Kasaka might join them did they finally let go of Tamari's ravaged body. The attack left her with a compound fracture of the forearm, but she was alive. Now, it is important to note that Orchid wasn't a one-time offender. This whale had a 25-year history of attacking trainers at SeaWorld. In 2006, she attacked another trainer during a routine medical procedure, drilling her in the chest with her rostrum and knocking her over an elevated wall, leaving the trainer unconscious. But SeaWorld kept using her in shows. West Park dog attack. Even man's best friend can turn deadly when things go wrong. This case actually happened this year on August 26th. This was in West Park, Florida. An unidentified man is taking a walk through his neighborhood near Southwest 38th Street and 58th Avenue when his afternoon stroll becomes a fight for survival. Three dogs, pit bulls, come charging
I always
at
need a
him,
weapon
and what
on you,
follows
man.
is captured on a neighbor's ring camera in disturbing detail. The footage shows the man desperately trying to escape, first jumping onto a utility box, then climbing a palm tree. But these dogs weren't giving up. They keep attacking, gnawing at his arms and legs as he falls to the ground. He's yelling out in agony while the
Please like
loud
the
barks
video,
echo
dogs.
through the neighborhood. Alberto Dominguez, who lives nearby, heard the screaming and knew something was seriously wrong. When he rushed to help, he found the victim bloodied but fortunately conscious. He was hospitalized with significant injuries. The thing is, this wasn't the first time these same three dogs attacked a human. Just over a month earlier, Juan Echevarria was mauled by the same three pit bulls in the exact same neighborhood. He fell while trying to fend them off and damage his wrist in the process. Of course, this man reported that first attack to the authorities. Quote, "They didn't take away the dogs. They just issued a citation," he said. "I told them it's gonna happen again. They don't care." And he was right. It did happen again. The dogs were getting loose regularly because there was a hole underneath the fence in their yard. The owners knew their dogs were vicious, neighbors knew they were dangerous, and yet nothing was done until someone else got mauled. So after the second attack, something was finally done to the dogs. The owner's boyfriend voluntarily surrendered all three dogs and they were euthanized. But it shouldn't have taken two separate maulings to get to that point, right? The body.
Yeah.
32-year-old woman climbed into polar bear exhibit, Berlin Zoo. Now we're getting into territories where survival becomes a lot less certain. Because what we're about to talk about includes someone making a decision that defies all logic and nearly cost them their life. So it's April of 2009 in Berlin Zoo, Germany. It's feeding time at the polar bear enclosure, and visitors are watching these massive predators do what they do best, hunt and eat. Then a 32-year-old woman identified only as Mandy K makes a choice that makes no sense. She climbs over the fence, pushes through a line of hedges, scales a wall, and jumps directly into the polar bear enclosure. Again, during feeding time, when the bears are most aggressive. This photo sequence shows what happened next. Mandy lands in the bear's moat, and immediately one of the four polar bears dives in after her. The bear starts attacking her, repeatedly biting her rear end, her arms, her legs. Then she's thrashing in the water, desperately trying to grab life preservers and ropes that panicked zookeepers are throwing down at her. At one point, they actually manage to pull her part way out, but she falls back in. The bear immediately goes after her again because, remember, these are vicious predators and to their eyes, she's food. And I mean that in every sense. Polar bears are some of the largest predators on Earth. We're talking about animals that can weigh up to 1,500 pounds, with paws the size of dinner plates and claws that can slice through steel like paper. The only reason Mandy survived is that the bears had probably already been fed. They were essentially playing with her rather than actively trying to kill her. But make no mistake, this was not gentle at all. She had severe lacerations to her arms, legs, and back. 6 zookeepers had to work together to distract the 4 bears while they pulled her to safety. But then there's an even more disturbing layer to this story. It later emerged that Mandy was a teacher who couldn't find work, and she'd been driven by despair to what she did. So this wasn't just someone making a bad decision, this was someone's way of just saying goodbye. She spent weeks in the hospital recovering from surgery on her wounds. She got cited for trespassing, and the zoo considered legal action against her. But honestly, I think surviving a polar bear encounter during feeding time is redemption enough. Elephant trampling attack in India. Sometimes the most dangerous animal encounters happen when the tourists forget they're dealing with wild animals that can weigh up to several tons and have zero patience for what humans might consider playfulness. And this is one of those cases. It happened in Bandipur National Park in Karnataka in India. Here you can see traffic backed up because an elephant has decided to snack on produce from the top of a trunk, and for 20 to 30 minutes everyone's keeping their distance like they should. But then lack of patience kicks in, and 2 cars decide to try sneaking past while the elephant is distracted. Huge mistake. The elephant immediately gets nervous, and that's when things go completely sideways. A man identified as R. Basavaraju apparently tries to take a selfie with the massive animal, probably using a camera flash that startled the already agitated elephant. The footage of what happens next is absolutely brutal. The elephant charges across the road in front of a moving car, trunk swinging, headed straight for the man. He turns and runs, but you can't outrun a pissed off elephant. They can hit speeds of 25 miles per hour, and this one's on a mission. The man stumbles and falls on the busy road, and the elephant catches up. It stomps on him several times, actually managing to rip off his pants and underwear during the attack. We're talking about an animal that weighs between 8,000 and 14,000 pounds, putting its full weight on a human body. The man remained on the ground for 3 to 5 minutes after the attack, but the fact that he got up at all is miraculous. The attack only ended when 2 vehicles from the nature reserve arrived with sirens and loud sounds to scare the elephant away. Once it left, traffic slowly returned to normal, and the man was rushed to the hospital with severe injuries. He survived, but only because he got incredibly lucky that the elephant decided to move on rather than finishing the job.
Yeah.
Travis Kaufman, mountain lion attack. Back in 2019, a man faced one of nature's most feared predators in a fight to the death, and the scars across his face tell the story of how he survived what should have been unsurvivable. This is Travis Kaufman, and his encounter with a mountain lion was a 10-minute battle where only one would walk away. At the time of the attack, Travis was a 31-year-old trail runner and was about halfway through what was supposed to be a routine 12 to 15 mile run through Horsetooth Mountain open space. He descended from a ridge and was running along a narrow section of the trail when he heard pine needles rustling behind him. Most of the time, he wouldn't even turn around, probably just a deer or a squirrel. But that time, something made him look back. About 10 feet away, staring directly at him, was a mountain lion. He did exactly what you're supposed to do. Threw his arms up, started yelling, trying to make himself look bigger and more intimidating. But this young cat wasn't backing down. It lunged straight at him. The lion's jaws locked onto Travis's wrist and stayed there for the entire fight. Its front claws dug into his back while it wrapped itself around his body. As they struggled, both of them tumbled 20 feet off the trail into a gully, turning this into a wrestling match for survival. Travis, who'd recently become a cat owner, knew how dangerous a cat's back legs could be, so he used his left knee to pin down the lion's hindquarters while it continued tearing at his face with its claws. Blood was streaming down from multiple puncture wounds as he desperately tried to find something, anything, to defend himself with. He grabbed sticks and tried stabbing the cat in the throat, but they were rotten and kept breaking. Then he found a rock and started smashing it into the lion's head, but the angle was all wrong, with his wrist still trapped in its jaws. He figured that after landing a couple of good hits to the back of its head and it's still not letting go, he'd have to do something more drastic. That's when he let out what he calls a barbarian yell, and he managed to get his right foot onto the lion's neck. He held it there until the lion died. After a couple of minutes, quote, it finally stopped moving and then the jaws opened. Only when the cat was dead did it release its grip on his wrist. At the hospital, doctors gave him 19 stitches across his cheek, 6 along the bridge of his nose, and another 3 in his wrist. His face was covered in puncture wounds from the cat's claws and teeth. The Abyss. Fatal shark attack in Israel. This one actually happened a few months ago. April 21st of 2025 at the Mediterranean waters off Hadera, Israel, near the country's biggest power station. The warm waters attract both fish and the sharks that hunt them. Sandbar and dusky sharks that locals have grown surprisingly comfortable with. Too comfortable, as it turns out. Mobile phone footage shows multiple sharks circling swimmers in the shallow water, including young children. But instead of panic, people are actually trying to pet these predators. One unidentified man stays in the water, seemingly fascinated by these massive animals swimming just feet away from him. Then everything changes in seconds. The man suddenly starts waving his arms frantically above the water, screaming help, and they're biting me, as onlookers watch in frozen terror. Someone calls emergency services, desperately telling them that, quote, there's someone here that a shark has bitten. Olga Beach was already a prohibited swimming area, specifically because of the shark presence. The Israel Nature and Parks Authority had issued warnings against interacting with sharks, calling them protected animals that should be avoided at all costs. This was only the 4th shark attack in Israeli history since 1948, so it's actually an incredibly rare event. But the rarity probably contributed to people's overconfidence, because unlike our previous cases, there's no happy ending here. Police found remains the next day and sent them to the National Center of Forensic Medicine for identification. The search involved every available resource, but it was too late. And even during the rescue efforts, one of the divers was attacked. Police spokesperson Aria Doron emphasized they were, quote, committed to doing everything they can to bring closure to the family. But the brutal reality is that there wasn't much left to find. When multiple sharks attack in open water, the outcome is almost always fatal. San Francisco Zoo tiger attack. Some of you might remember Christmas Day 2007 at the San Francisco Zoo, and I say some of you because here on the main channel, I understand that we do have older audience. So yeah, some of you might remember this, and some of you might have been born in 2007 or even after. All right, but either way, we're about to talk about it right now. It all started because some teenagers apparently thought it would be fun to taunt a 243-pound Siberian tiger. Later that afternoon, most visitors had already left the zoo. Someone reported seeing young men roaring at the lions, but nobody mentioned anything unusual happening at the tiger exhibit. An hour later, one 17-year-old boy and one tiger were dead. Tatiana was a 4-year-old female Siberian tiger who had been at the San Francisco Zoo for 2 years. Her enclosure had safely contained tigers for over 65 years. A 29-foot wide dry moat that was 12 feet 9 inches deep, surrounded by walls that should have been impossible for any big cat to scale. But on this day, Tatiana did the impossible. The 3 victims were Carlos Sosa Jr., age 17, and brothers Colbert Dhaliwal, age 23, and Paul Dhaliwal, age 19. Federal investigators later found sticks and pine cones inside the tiger exhibit, suggesting someone had been throwing objects at Tatiana. Paul later admitted to police he'd been drunk and yelling and waving at the animal. But how could an animal jump over a wall that big? Claw marks found near the top of the enclosure wall showed exactly how she'd escaped. She was using her hind legs to gain the traction needed to pull herself out. One successful leap from a 243-pound killing machine that had finally had enough. What happened next was a nightmare that unfolded in less than 20 minutes. Paul heard rustling in the bushes as they walked away from the exhibit. The tiger was out and she was hunting. Colbert and Carlos reportedly tried to stop Tatiana from mugging Paul, but the tiger turned on Carlos. The attack was fatal. Then, instead of staying with her kill like most big cats would, Tatiana followed the brothers' blood trail 300 yards through the zoo. She even passed other exhibits with animals she could have attacked but ignored them all, focused entirely on the 2 brothers. Meanwhile, these 2 reached the Terrace Cafe, desperately calling for help. At 5:21 p.m., Colbert called 911, but the initial response was chaos. Zoo employees didn't believe what they were hearing, with one even saying, I don't know if they're on drugs or what. They're screaming about an animal that has attacked them, but there's no animals out. More than 6 minutes passed before the zoo staff realized the brothers were telling the truth, and even then, security kept police and paramedics out for another 5 minutes because of safety protocols. And while this was happening, Tatiana found the brothers outside the cafe. When police finally arrived, Officer Daniel Cruz saw the tiger sitting next to Colbert. Then she attacked him for some seconds, then stopped, and that was when the police opened fire against her. Although some say this wasn't her fault, that she had been pushed past her breaking point, and when she finally snapped, she made sure the people responsible paid the ultimate price.
People throwing shit at her in her fucking enclosure.
Horatio Chapel polar bear attack. On August 5th, 2011, Horatio Chapel, an Eton schoolboy hoping to study medicine, was in remote Vannpost Glacier in Svalbard, Norway. It was an expedition organized by the British Schools Exploring Society, but there he became the victim of institutional negligence that left him defenseless against one of the Arctic's most dangerous predators, a polar bear. The warning signs had been there for days. Lauren Beach, another person on the trip, remembered finding huge polar bear footprints, but it didn't make her worried. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that would definitely worry me. I don't know why she wasn't worried. At the same time, there were device failures that plagued this expedition. The tripwire alarm system designed to warn of approaching bears was defective with missing parts. The party had tried to fix it using paper clips. The rifle they carried was a World War II era Mauser 98K that expedition leaders had received minimal training on. Also, there weren't enough pen flares. And for clarity, these are devices that shoot flares 50 meters to frighten bears, and also only team leaders had access to them. Horatio's father would later say they were left with just their bare hands to fight off. So at 7:30 a.m. that morning, a 24-year-old polar bear, hungry, in pain from bad teeth, and made aggressive by these conditions, approached the camp undetected. The tripwire system failed when the bear knocked over a supporting post, causing the cartridge to fall out without detonating. Scott Bonnell Smith was sharing a tent with Horatio, and he described being woken up by the shaking of the tent. He thought someone was trying to wake them. but then the tent was ripped to shreds. Matthew Burke was in a different tent and heard someone scream that there was a bear. So when he looked out, he just saw Horatio in his boxer shorts being savaged. The bear backed up and then came crashing down on him, smashing him with its paws. It mauled his head, face, and neck. The last one was the injury that tragically caused his death. Trip leader Michael Reed grabbed the group's rifle and tried to help, but it jammed. Bullets just fell to the ground. The bear then turned on him, sinking its teeth into his head. Andrew Ruck, the mountain leader, tried to distract the animal by charging and throwing rocks at its face. The bear knocked him down and swiped his face with its claws. Finally, Reed found one of the fallen rounds, loading it into the rifle, and shot the bear dead. Now, I can't show you guys the actual photo, so I'm going to show you guys the pixelated version of the photo, but there is an image of the dead polar bear being taken away. Wes Perkins bear attack. When people talk about surviving the impossible, they're usually...
Go for a walk. I've been outside all day. Come back and probably play some Rune. I'll see you guys in a bit.